Deepak has introduced, I studied pharmacy, ending up with a master's in pharmaceutics and a PhD in pharmacology. After my PhD, I realized that I'm not cut out for academia. So it's quite an effort before I realized that I'm not into a certain area or aspect of what I'm doing. I then started working for different science councils in a role that I really enjoyed, which was technology transfer and commercialization. Also worked for funding agency TIA. And there, again, I came to the realization that I'm not cut out for a 9-to-5 job. This is when I started exploring a business concept. I think where I have been fortunate is that my journey through traversing the innovation value chain, so to speak, has really prepared me for what I'm doing today. And for that reason, I never imagined that I would not fly. And so it has been quite a history coming to setting up and starting Smart Biotech. I guess I'm a calculated risk taker. When I started Smart Biotech, I thought I had the right mix of ideas, backing, technology, funding to make this new venture fly in a year or two. After 2 years, the idea had changed. The technology was not what we started with. The partnership had fallen apart, and the funding tap we had secured had been turned off. As you can imagine, a lot of people, when you start up a biotech company, think, are you mad? Are you bonkers? Are you off your head? But I do believe, and I do think that my experience is that with many of my fellow entrepreneurs, they are actually the best people that this country has available to start biotech companies. So after 2 years, why didn't I choose, or why didn't I decide to close shop? It's because in those 2 years, we achieved so much good work, and more importantly, enough enthusiasm and signals from different industry players. To this end, we had an amazing village of people that had contributed time, expertise, resources, network access, advice. And when I reflect back, this is where a lot of the impetus came from to keep going with the company. As I say, when you fall forwards. And so at the time, we happened to fall forward into the lap of one of AECI's divisions. And they were being courted by the company looking at investing in Smart Biotech. We had a product, but it was still under development. And for them, it's meant early stage, red flags for a company like that. Also during this time, we were also being courted by a number of up and coming equity funders that came from the SME fund stable. The currency of a Black female-led biotech company was sexy and a great story. However, we were early stage, and that was not what they were looking for. And so they started to drop us one by one. Then we came to the grit stage, where you're giving it your all, you redo if necessary, take time to do it right, and you just stubbornly ignore giving up. And during this period, there were times where I would question myself, is this really working, or am I deluding myself? I think missed all this period of reevaluation, totally out of the blue. We were approached by an angel investor. And it's good to look back now to say the grit was not so nice in the mouth, but it did pay off. I particularly like the illustration in the book by Angela Duckworth, Grit, where the main arrow is facing a lot of arrows that are against you. And I think that reflects that despite so many people or so many a situation where there's a lot of discouragement, you continue to move forward and you continue to push your big arrow forward, despite all the challenges that are coming at you at the time. I now reach the crux of my presentation this afternoon. I like this illustration of equality and equity. Equality being giving people the same thing, Equity is fairness in every situation. And fairness in every situation is a non-size-fit-all situation where you have to adapt your offering or your service or your support to that particular entity accordingly. One of the requests in terms of this presentation was to look at some of the challenges that a smart biotech encountered during its journey. I think false hopes and empty promises. You know, in an environment where there's a lot said about supporting biotech entities, some of what is written on paper does not always translate to the practical outcomes that one encounters. And so these are some of the false hopes and the empty promises where policy may not be have necessarily translated into implementable actions. And so you remain in hope that you end up receiving some of the promises that are written in documents. Lots of likes, but low risk appetite. We all know how difficult it is for investments in the biotech space, largely because of the long lead times, the high risk of the technology, what if it doesn't work, and the like. But everyone likes the fact that you're a Black woman in an industry that is not that doesn't have a lot of entrepreneurs in it, let alone Black female entrepreneurs, but yet still the appetite for products that are still in development remains very low. Many hoops to jump and many office doors to knock before you actually get something out of the promises that are often made to biotech startups. I think one of the challenges is decision makers who've never been entrepreneurs and don't understand what are the day-to-day struggles that you're faced with, and how you try in many ways to approach things or to set up your biotech company in a way that fits their sort of like boxes, but at the same time trying to be entrepreneurial and be progressive in what you do. And so often there's a disconnect between understandings from your decision makers and the entrepreneurs. Solutions to support entrepreneurs are not always integrated. Some cases the funding may be there, but the funding has got conditions, and that you're now forced, you know, in many ways to adhere to conditions that may not always be in the best interests of your enterprise. And if you often wish that there could be a meeting of minds and of approaches that are solutions that are the best for your company. I think an important one is spin-outs and startups start from different are in different play fields. Spin-outs often come from universities and your science councils, and they come with the backing and the resource support of those institutions, where it may be small things such as people, access to people, or access to systems and processes that are readily available. And so spin-out starts on that base where already some of the systems and processes are in place. And they only need to be transferred into the new entity that's established. I'm not saying that it's not easy to establish a spin-out, but I think they do start from a different base to a startup. And then the aspect of the love you to death red tape. This leads me to my next slide of rands and cents. I have funding proposals in progress in South Africa, and they're undergoing consideration. One is for 1.5 million, the other is for 15 million. And one finds themselves having to put the same amount of effort for both. To me, it doesn't always make sense. And the one thing I would give to the private equity people that we dealt with previously that I mentioned before is that they had an individual approach to our funding needs. And in that way, we were addressed in a way that we could respond more dynamically and more effectively to their requirements as they required different documents and so on from us. So in terms of the one size fits all, you grin and you bear it painfully, but you know that the funding is important. I think this many see as smart biotech having reached the pinnacle of the iceberg. They don't see what happens or what goes below the surface of the water. And I'm always cautious to people to say we are probably at the water's surface, so to speak. And this is my last slide. One thing about being an entrepreneur in a difficult field like biotech is that you need to be grounded. You need to be grounded as a person, understanding why you're doing this, because that is what will keep you persevering and know where you want to go to as well. Be accepting that you will need to make adjustments along the way, and that is perfectly fine. People often say that it is a lonely journey. It is a lonely journey because those people in the industry and space that claim they're so willing to support you are too busy chasing bigger goals. And frankly, and often we found that you're a mosquito to them. Their main interest is when it comes to reporting time, and they want to make claims of supporting Black women-owned company, feature you in their annual reports. Even though their doors are open and they answer their calls, it is their actions after you've spoken to them that will make the difference. I know I'm highlighting the challenges here, and there have been many also good successes and good stories to share. And there'll come a time for that. But I'd like to end my presentation there and hand back to Deepak. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Deepak.
Thanks so much, Sibongile. I think you've summarized your journey very nicely and put forward a lot of discussion points that we're going to take forward later. Thank you for that. Next, we have Brent Thompson. Brent is the co-founder and CEO of Mzansi Meats Company. They're Africa's first cultivated meat company, and Brent is the co-creator of Disclosure ZA and the co-founder of Credence Institute. Brent studied finance and economics at the University of Cape Town and Stellenbosch University. He has worked in alternate protein and animal advocacy for more than a decade in both South Africa and Germany. He's constantly interested in the way we eat and how we can use innovation to drive better food systems. Brent, I'll hand over to you to take us through your journey.
Thanks very much, Deepak. Just a quick thanks also to you and to all the organizers for putting this together. I know it's a lot of difficult work that goes in behind putting a conference up and then also making it digital. Even though we're kind of all very used to it, it is still a big challenge. And yeah, just thanks very much to Dr. Gumi before. It was just honesty. It's just an honest conversation of how difficult the challenge and the rewards of starting a company. Yeah, it's fantastic to hear such a great story. I also like to say, Deepak, I didn't realize you put me in a room with much much smarter people. But I know when you're not the smartest person in the room, I think you're in the right room. So let me see. I'm a marketing guy. I hope you can see my screen. Just shout Deepak or Lloyd if you can't. But you've heard a bit about me. You've heard a bit about the company. I'm going to try and break this up into two parts, essentially give you some insight into Mzansi, tell a bit of the story, how we got here. And then kind of go and focus on the ecosystem that we're looking at when it comes to food tech or biotech, and sort of refer to that village that was sort of the thesis or the intro to this discussion. So let me just do a quick definition. I know South Africans know how to say Mzansi, but we do a lot of presentations to foreigners, and there's always a bit of a lesson that I have to do. But I know everybody in this call probably knows it, but if they aren't, it's Mzansi, and it literally means south. And it's just a really great colloquial term for South Africa that many people across the country know, and they use it in a way that everybody understands regardless of their language. And I think that was the word that we wanted to use to describe our company, because we wanted to make something meat that was enjoyed and by all, and is sort of iconic within the South African way of how we just interact with each other. Just some things on terminology. When I'm referring to cellular agriculture, I'm talking sort of broadly. It includes cultivated meats, meat essentially grown from cells, maybe a bit of plant-based and fermentation. I'm going to incorporate all of them, but Mzansi is a cultivated meat company, and I'll get some more information on exactly what that means if there is any questions. Healthy meat, for me, means two things. It's we've got to make something that's healthy. It's got to be, but it's got to be meat. It's not an alternative. I think a lot of people think that we've got to find an alternative meat. So I'm saying, no, we've got to find meat, but something that's a bit more innovative and maybe even more healthier. And it's got to be accessible. The price has got to be correct. It's got to be available to your average South African. Your average South African loves meat, and we need to be able to put it in front of them. And finally, Mzansi is not just looking at it in its sort of in a micro space. We're looking at a macro. We're looking at the food system around how we eat and how we can use innovation to drive change for good. I've been having this discussion with people about where we get our food from, and particularly when it looks at how animals are involved in the food chain for about 10 years, as Dheepak mentioned. It's something that has been very interesting for me from beginning of university days and my professional career. I could list all the facts that are available or in front of me that are relevant to South Africa, how many animals are killed, what it does to the greenhouse gases, what are the antibiotics used. But from my experience is that I think eventually people are sort of tired of just hearing the problems and tired of hearing of the challenges with whether it's energy or whether it's food system or name another problem. And I think that's where Mzansi is trying to find a sort of unique aspect and to say that, yes, we think there are issues, but we want to be involved. We want to be involved with finding the solutions and being very solutions focused as a company. And that's our offering. When we see the meat market, I think a lot of people would think, oh my goodness, how much meat do South Africans eat? Well, they eat a lot. I don't think that's a surprise to any, but that's an opportunity for our company. That's an opportunity to go and provide a solution that we believe is better, that people will gravitate towards and put that in their shopping basket and compared to the conventional version, because it beats it on price, taste, and all these types of things in the next 5 to 10 years. Currently, we're in our R&D phase. We're very much a startup. And we are working hard in the BioCity labs, where we're based in Woodstock, to be bringing Africa's first cultivated beef burger. And we will be hoping to get that into retail in about 2023. But now, I've been talking a lot, and I haven't really told you exactly what is the solution that we believe. I'm also firstly saying it's what I believe. I'm not to say that I'm always right. Our team are also, we know that we've got to have some doubts on whether or not this is the final solution, but we believe strongly in this being a potential part of the system change that we think needs to happen within food systems. So our process starts with a collection of tissue samples from the conventional industry that we know already. You can go to whether it's a subsistence farmer or a larger farmer to grab a few cells from that bovine animal, and then that animal then continues throughout its day. It's done by a veterinarian. And we take some of those cells, bring it back to BioCity where we're at the moment. We pop it in something that will help sort of replicate exactly what's happening in everybody's body. One of those things, I mean, we all, I think, know our body temperatures at the moment because of COVID, and we have to check it 50 times a day. But we have to keep those cells at about 37 degrees. We add some media, we add some growth media, we add things that the cells need to eat, fats, salts, amino acids, and the like. And we just let those things grow in a very much controlled, and essentially we're trying to replicate the perfect condition outside of an animal without needing the animal to be killed. We're in that R&D phase, so we're still growing towards the ability to actually make something that people can enjoy and eat, but we're looking to follow the international industry, which is, as I mentioned, at the end of next year and hopefully a little bit sooner. And you can see it's essentially the same meat, but just a slightly improved, we believe, process. Just a quick back on I know this is a conversation about the startups and the people involved. And I think it takes a village, but in the beginning, it takes 2 people or 1 person with a crazy idea. I think Dr. Gumi before me was talking about her experiences, and it talks to the individual that needs to drive this and then bring in a village to help actually sort of implement and make that dream reality. Jay has been working in this, working for years in this space in alternative and impact investing. And he's got he taught himself a tremendous amount of information about cellular agriculture and cultivated meat that not many, I mean, when I connected with Jay a couple of years ago to really start this business. There wasn't many people that had even thought about what we were doing. So we were bringing a lot of this information to South Africa for the very first time, and that was a massive challenge. And to find partners that would actually believe in us and say, yes, you guys aren't just smoking your socks, you're going to be doing something that that could have massive changes for the food system in the long run. And I always seem to wear the same shirt, so sorry about that. And then in the village, that sort of has to sort of be fleshed out. So I'm not going to go through everyone here, but the team that makes it possible is what makes it possible. A startup is nothing without its team. Everybody is essentially a co-founder in my minds, because you're all breaking things, you're all doing unique things within the company. And these are the people. It's like the first or the second person after you start a company that actually makes it real. But there's a significant amount of hurdles that we have to jump over as a company in terms of bringing that skill set from either outside our company, where what we can afford to pay for, as well as internationally. We're about a year and a half old. Companies have been doing cultivated meat and cellular agriculture for nearly 10 years, maybe longer. So we've had to connect with people locally, Prof. Kidson and Dr. Bello as examples from UCT and others from international places to sort of bring that, import that knowledge as well into our young startup. I'm not going to touch on too much about the regulatory environment, but I think knowing the rules of the village is important. We've already started to do that, and we're pretty confident that South Africa ultimately is going to be the leading in food tech, in biotech, and sort of, well, particularly food tech on the continent in a very, very short space of time. We've seen a number of new companies start up in the last couple of years, and I think the regulations within it is going to really see the benefit of supporting the work that we do. But what really matters, and this is the thing that actually all it actually does come down to in the beginning, is where can you get funding? Where you can get funding to start something up? When Jay and I started having this conversation about a year and a half ago with investors and other partners, people thought we were a bit bonkers. I mean, they didn't throw us out the rooms, but we definitely didn't know the exact type of ask, how we meant to sell South Africa, how we meant to sell Africa, and how we're supposed to sell an entire industry. Because that's what we were essentially doing. We were the first ones in Africa to think about doing cultivated meat. And that was a sort of challenge, but it also allowed us to be first mover and to dictate the narrative and create a lot of attention to our company, Mzansi. You can see that 2019 to 2020, things sort of wobbled a bit because of COVID when it came to general VCs, but that's starting to change. Where's that funding going to? And I think this is the thing that Africa needs to look to solve. It's way too concentrated into the four major countries. And South Africa, to be honest, could be doing better when you look at someone like Kenya, who's just so far ahead in something like fintech. Egypt's also a massive player, as well as Nigeria. I think this is where South Africa has an ability to start putting its hand up and say, look, as a country, we want to attract more startups. We want to be the place that brings all the smartest and brightest minds in. And where you can do it is through something like cellular agriculture. Funding has almost tripled since 2019 to 2020, compared to when you look at VC funding, which kind of hovered over the same amount. So people are hungry to get involved. Investors are hungry to get involved, but they need to know where to put their money. And Mzansi was the first last year. Now it's starting to change, but there's still so much capacity to sort of create more people interested in Africa, maybe, and South Africa, not just one or two companies, because it is a village. What we've been doing, besides working with our existing investors, is kind of honing on advisors who've come from the likes like John. He's an investor with us. He comes from Singapore, but he's got experience in Africa. Ryan is prolific across the space. We're speaking to all these people and trying to get them excited and bringing attention and focus into Africa. I'm just looking here, and Ryan, it says invested in over 120 early stage food startups. That's outdated. It's about 114 now, and a number of them were from Africa. So it's starting to happen, and Mzansi is helping to try and lead the way with other partners. So this is what we want to do. I mean, all these products that you see in front of you are meat, salmon products, a T-bone steak, burgers. All of these are cultivated. They're grown without the need of an animal being involved in the slaughter process, and they're going to be hitting market over the next 18 months to 2 years. Mzansi wants to be at the forefront in Africa, competing internationally, but also showcasing the way locally how others can get involved to capture this cultivated meat market. And ultimately what it is getting more funding, as I've mentioned, but it's getting access to machinery. This is on the left, is a bioreactor or a meat cultivator, and creating meat. That's a simple question that we need to answer, and working with partners and getting investors involved and getting the right team is what we need to do, and we're starting to do it. To close off, here's just a map on, this is brand new, this came out this month in August, sort of food tech in Africa. Bottom right, you can see some of the companies in Africa looking at it. It's starting to create traction. Africa is very much a hot topic, and I think it can become hotter, but it requires assistance from other players, not just the companies themselves, to enable them to de-risk their work and say, let's bring more investment to the country, to the continent. Thank you, Dheepak.
Thanks for that, Brent. Two very different journeys with some similar challenges that we will discuss shortly. Before we move forward, I just want to introduce our panelists. We've got Dr. Santosh Ramcharan, who's from the CSR. He's a research group leader at the biomanufacturing group within the chemicals cluster at the CSR, and he's also the founder of JVS Biotechnology. He's focused on developing and optimizing biomanufacturing processes for various disruptive bio-based products and technologies for adoption in the South African industries and SMMEs. He has over 20 years experience in biotechnology and have held positions at AECI, Life Lab, and CSR, amongst others. He's a registered professional scientist and holds a PhD in chemical engineering from Lund University in South Africa, in Sweden, and is the author and contributor to several peer-reviewed publications in the fields of applied microbiology, bioprocessing, and recombinant proteins. He serves as a chairperson, moderator, and assessor on various research and evaluation panels for the National Research Foundation, and was previously appointed as mentor for biotech startups at the Innovation Hub. He also serves as a member of a review committee for the Sub-Saharan L'Oreal Women in Science Awards, and holds research fellowship position at the School of Life Sciences at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. His core expertise includes bioprocess engineering, process development, recombinant DNA technology, protein purification, biomanufacturing, bioentrepreneurship, and technology transfer. The next panelist that we have is Dr. Siyavuya Bulani. He serves as the Deputy Director, Industry and Environment at the Department of Science and Innovation. He has previously worked as a researcher at the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, as well as the Agricultural Research Council. In addition, he's worked as a Science Liaison Officer for Overseas Collaborations at the Academy for Sciences of South Africa. Sia holds a PhD in biotechnology from the University of Free State. The last panel member is Mr. Daniel Ndima. He's the CEO of Cape Bio and has a bachelor's and honors degree in biotechnology from the University of Western Cape and a master's degree in structural biology in infectious diseases from the University of Pretoria. Throughout his academic journey, he was awarded multiple awards and scholarships for his excellence in academics, social responsibility, student leadership, and entrepreneurial initiatives. He's a fellow at Ellen Gray Orbis Foundation. Daniel's also a scholar at the Mandela Rhodes Foundation, class of 2015, and he's also a Brightest Young Minds alumnus. He founded 3 startups as an undergraduate student and was subsequently awarded the Vice Chancellor's Award at the University of Western Cape in 2020. He was listed as one of African influencers for change by the UNDP Africa, a Careers 1825 role model, and featured in Africa Innovates magazines. He participated in United Nations dialogues on African readiness to combat COVID-19, and is a Mail and Guardian Top 200 South African 2021 winner under the Science and Technology category. Daniel strongly advocates for science that creates jobs, improves the quality of lives, and contributes to national development and the economy. I think you'll agree that we have quite a competent panel to discuss this very interesting topic. And I'd like to open, we've heard from Sibongile and Brett on their journeys as startups, and drawing on what Sibongile highlighted, that there's a difference between a startup and a spin-out. I'd like to just ask Daniel if he can share some of the challenges he's experienced as a spin-out from CSR and his journey through the biotech space.
Thanks, Chair, for the warm welcome. I thought you get a summary there. Apologies. And nice to see you again, my former chair, Dr. Kumbi. We were in another discussion earlier on. But Chair, and thank you to my fellow panelists. I think these are great guests here, and I appreciate being part of this panel discussion. Maybe let me summarize just before the spin out, Dheepak, because I think you were part of the journey that I'm now sort of embarking. Just before I got to CSRR, I think people may not know that I went to CSRR seeking an opportunity to start up a company. And I couldn't go through, and I had to cheat the system. If there is any state of commission of anything, I'm willing to testify that I had to apply for an internship that you guys had. I think it was a jobs program just to get inside. I think the first day I was introduced to Dheepak, and they were saying, "This is your manager." And I spoke to Dheepak. I said, "Dheepak, I'm not here for this. I actually here because I was advised by someone to come to CSRR and actually look for an opportunity for me to do something." And Dheepak really took me to a director that really helped in terms of introducing me to a few groups. And then I had to work under another group that was actually doing something that I thought was linked to what I wanted to do. And I think most importantly, during that period after we started the project, it was to see how the market respond to the products that we wanted to develop. And we started to take the products throughout the country for market testing. If you remember, Dheepak, I was quite on the road and knocking door to door, giving people samples to test. And the rejection, the amount of rejections that I got then were shocking. And I remember being in Cape Town, spending about 2 weeks there, if not one. And actually, I think I got about 4 people that were willing to test our products. Only one actually tested our product and gave us feedback. The rest didn't. And you can imagine when you are trying to gauge the market interest and the perception around your product, and they say, where is it coming from? Oh, CSRR. No. Is it better than those that exist? You say, we are testing it. Yes, we think that is better. Really, I think as we gain a momentum, as we realize that actually we had to be driven by the market, not coming with a product that we think the market would take. And we started asking very relevant questions. We were asking, what do you want? What is your pain point? What is it that you use most of the time that you think we can be of help? Because we are trying to develop products that are based on your solution. And I think this strategy really helped, because from then we started to realize that actually the PCR portfolio was in high demand in the country. And then we went back to a drawing board. We say, perhaps let's produce a tech polymerase and purify and test it. If it works, let's take it to the market again. And that's where we started to see a bit of traction. So, not knowing what the market would require and assuming what market would require was really a challenge for us. And we had to go back to a drawing board. I think this is still our strategy even now. And I think, coming out of CSRR and taking a clean exit model, meaning, you don't have financial support from CSRR, you are on your own, basically. I think that was a big of a challenge for us. And I remember getting into an accelerator program that was coordinated by E-Squared Investments. And this is where I think for about 14 months, we had only about 300,000 rands. Remember, I have to pay my bill, I have to pay for my car, I still have to market, I still have to make sure that I pay for manufacturing of the product because we don't have the lab. We are operating from coffee shops, basically in terms of hosting meetings. Sometimes I go to University of Pretoria just to make sure that when I talk to the US guys, at least the background doesn't really, embarrass me. And thankfully, UP was quite, welcoming. My former supervisor was very welcoming for us to even give the students to basically do the QC for us so that we can have a little bit of a market content. We were on our own, basically, and it was quite a difficult moment. But I have to say that we had to prove ourselves. I think this is where an entrepreneur is grilled, to get the best out of the entrepreneur. You don't put everything on a silver platter and say, you've got 10 million, go. I think there are ways in which you can sift through and see, who can really bear the brand and actually thrive going forward. And I think we were actually, there were times where we feel like, this is not working. You've got job opportunities, you've got offers everywhere, but you're busy suffering here. I could easily earn 60K from a bank that wanted to have me in that time. I say, no, this has been a journey. I studied biotechnology for this thing. I've been going up and down for this thing. I cannot give up. I think at some stage, we managed to convince our investors to say, we have this distribution agreement in the US. I think that was after spending about 4 weeks in the US, and they wanted to have an offtake. And this is when really we started to see an interest from investors, and then they gave us a bit of cash. And from there, I think we started to see, okay, now we can recruit people. It was just 2 of us during that time. Now we can have 4 million people that can assist us. And still, you don't have the team structure. You don't have the right kind of framework. You're still learning in a process. I think entrepreneurship is about being willing to learn and unlearn as much as you can, so that you can be as agile as possible, because there's nothing that's going to come straight as you think it would. So there's still a bit of ups and downs, even now, but I mean, we have learned quite a lot during that period. And I think, again, we started to say, perhaps we need to be able to identify really inefficiencies that we see on the continent, so that when we speak to these sponsors, these investors, when we speak to partners, because we view our clients as partners, we don't view them as customers, as we like. We see them as partners. What is it that we can say? What is our pitch? And we have to refine that. Because through the pitching to whoever you talk to, whether it's your customer, potential customer or not, you've got to have a pitch. When you speak about your business, you've got to have a pitch, and you've got to be passionate. They've got to see, because you don't know who they will have a conversation with. And in most cases, we have seen people that talk to us because they heard about us from someone that we're talking to. So it has been a journey, and the challenge has always been about getting investments. Getting trust, because South Africa has a lot of perception when it comes to local products. And we started to say, let's look elsewhere. And we started shipping products overseas, and those people used to actually develop product that they sell back in the country, but we couldn't do the same. They would just repackage and sell back to South Africa, but we couldn't do the same because of perception. We said, okay, if there's a perception, then let's look overseas, because that's where our market is. I mean, we can't suffer if we have a market in the US, even if they sell here at 10 times the price. If we can't get the market here, then why not? Let's go and get those dollars and build our business. And I think those are the challenges that we really face. But the journey has been an interesting one. I think I will never forget this journey. I think it's made me to be who I am. Yes, I'm banned. Even today, I'm still banned, but I think it's worth it. And thank you, Chair. I think this is a piece that I wanted to share.
Thanks for that, Daniel. It's a very interesting journey there as well. I think in the interest of time, I just want to stimulate some of the discussion. And to kick it off, I just want to pose a question. Staying in line with what Daniel is talking, from where he started this CSR, let's go back there and pose this question to Dr. Ramcharan. So, Santosh, what do you believe is holding us back from embedding biotechnology as a key contributor to the South African economy? I know you at the Biomanufacturing Center, you guys have a full range of kit. How do you tie these two questions in together on how to make a real impact?
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm a bit confused here whether to put on my entrepreneurial hat or CSR's hat, but I'll stick with CSR for now. And in this environment, I mean, I think the bio-entrepreneurs have basically spoken about lots about their challenges, but I think in terms of as a country and where we can kind of almost take this further and really stimulate what we call a bioeconomy, I think one of the major issues is alignment. Alignment in terms of research institutes, universities, even bioincubators like yourself, aligned to industry. What do we really need? Do we really understand what industry needs in South Africa and what South Africa needs? The second aspect people talk about is always about innovation. No, we need to get innovation. We need to be more innovative. Who innovates? It's people. So it's quite simple. Invest in people. Invest in the Sibongiles, invest in Brett, invest in Daniel. These are the guys that are going to bring innovation to South Africa. And from there, you would look at other models in terms of stimulating innovation. Why is it that I have to come to a university or do a science degree and then only learn about bio-entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship? Why is it not at a schooling level where entrepreneurship is basically honed into our kids such that there's options for them apart from a degree? Because let's face it, 90% of the students coming out with masters and PhDs are basically getting graduated into unemployment in South Africa because there's no uptake. So give them those options very early on. I think that would stimulate basically more kind of entrepreneurship or more kind of development of this economy. And another fundamental problem that I see is in terms of policy and regulation. And there as well, is terms of alignment of our research initiatives. If I take an example around bio-based products, which is globally, the entire globe is going into bio-based products. Why is regulation not put in place in South Africa to allow uptake of these products or force industries to take those products? If you take the example of Daniel, fantastic, he's got a SAPRA-approved COVID kit. I would assume, and I'm hoping I'm right, that the Department of Health is now knocking on his door to supply this to South Africa. He should be given preference. It's a local product. He should be given preference for uptake of that. But yet regulation stops that. And that's where I think fundamentally we fall shy in this whole thing. Thanks.
Thanks for that insight, Santosh. I think I agree with you, especially along bio-entrepreneurship. As a biotech incubator, this is the key thing that we need to navigate, is providing the entrepreneurship support and mentorship to these startups who are absolutely brilliant, but need the business and entrepreneurial support to take their ideas forward. There's also, I just want to land on something that Sibongile mentioned. It was clear, it's perseverance around wanting to get this startup into a real commercial value. And it's the same thing that both Brett and Daniel demonstrated. And I think that's core. Aside from all the other challenges, is the entrepreneur needs to persevere through all these challenges. I think Sibongile has raised and has categorized the challenges very, very eloquently. And I like the one that she mentioned about love you to death, red tape. I think all of us that have worked within the National System of Innovation would agree with that. I think, from that point, I'd like to just pose to Sia to give us a government's view on what you think needs to change within this village or this National System of Innovation to help startups and entrepreneurs wanting to make real impact in the bioeconomy. Sia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for the invitation to participate in this panel discussion and to have an opportunity to have a discussion with the colleagues that are here. I think before I respond to your question, it's very important that I touch on what the Deputy Minister indicated earlier on this morning when he indicated that the continent accounts for about 1.4% of the total global manufacturing capacity. This makes it quite clear that we are not harnessing our full potential in biomanufacturing on the continent. And that we need to strengthen bioinnovation. He mentioned two things, one of which is the importance of the continent and recognizing bioinnovation as one of the approaches that will shape the future of biomanufacturing on the continent. And secondly, I think from the country's point of view, there are several challenges that the minister mentioned, and one of which included critical mass skills and infrastructure support that is needed for translation of ideas into products. I think so. What is required is an open innovation model that is aimed at developing biomanufacturing capabilities in the country and the continent in general. There are things that I would like to mention, three things that require strengthening. They're already in the system, but require strengthening, and those are providing support for research excellence, bio, grad, and data we have to ensure that innovation is important, bio innovation is important. I think that's one which touched on, mentioned working in a coffee shop, an issue access to upskilling, piloting skills. So that is in the past that require investment building infrastructure. That is very, very important for our country and the continent in general. And thirdly, that I think Dr. Bowman mentioned earlier on that the time there is a mismatch between those that are entrepreneurs and those that are working and supposedly taking bosses. And I think what is required is that we have capable personnel that support entrepreneurship in order to drive business development and commercialization of bioinnovation. Those are the things that already exist in the system that require strengthening. But I think there are certain things that are probably kind of new or not new in the system that one of those is consider supervising innovation activities in a similar manner done for research and development at the university. Say this, for example, if you want to consider if you publish a paper, you get some amount of money for publishing that paper. But the same is not considered when one generates an IP. I think this is very important to consider such incentives. And I think that the last one is a extension, looking at this more regional or provincial establishment of economic zones or innovation zones. There are many examples that one could consider in this. Make an example, for example, one would consider Zulu-Natal and Mpumalanga, the opportunity to consider forestry and biorefineries. If you look at Limpopo and Northern Cape, consider a regional zone for bioenergy. This is absolutely good one to leverage funding from municipalities or the province. I think I was, but from us, there's some of the changes that we consider.
And I think most of us would agree that these things that need to be changed. The reality is that to see the changes implemented, we've always had the challenge we've been doing, but putting systems in place to make sure support national sustainability. In this, we need to make impact. We run out of time. Topics very interesting. We need a couple more hours to just. There's no move on and drawing what he has said. The philosophy is a technology incubator position to start and me make impact by economy. And we've mentioned a little different to is that our shared territory we make available to opinion that there are play around without worry of getting the network itself. On that note, Santosh touch on the value of like that. To ask Gumbi your views on institutions like how position them even better, making by.
Thanks, Deepak. Deepak, every initiative that is being done to support entrepreneurs is very important to entrepreneurs. All the entrepreneurs are in different stages of development, different requirements, and need the support that is also provided. And I think that as a country, we are beginning to listen more to entrepreneurs in terms of their requirements. I think the city is one of those that respond and trying to more responsibly react to. I think these are very important to accept some that entrepreneurs because not every entrepreneur has got access to CR or access to an MC or a university. And I think this kind of ability makes a difference to them. I think also one thing of important to build disability